Welcome to the E.N. Jenckes Museum. I'm pleased to have you here. I'm Vice President of the Douglas Historical Society, which is the present owner of this very interesting historical building. The Jenckes store was originally owned by E. Balcom and Company, Ebenezer to be specific. And they ran the store until 1839 when he sold it to Gardner Chase. Chase made a number of additions to this building. He broadened the front, built a barn in the back, and later added the back store and a grain room, which connected to the barn. In 1883, Edward N. Jenckes bought the store from Chase's widow. He lived upstairs with his wife, son Edward, and two daughters, E. Myelma and Helen. He made several additions to this building and included the monitor skylight and the furniture room, which is a stairway over there that goes up to where we have a lot of other items. When the Jenckes, we call them the Jenckes girls, Myelma and Helen, decided that they could no longer maintain the store, which they ran until the 1950s. It ended up as like a store. You could buy anything, but it was always a store that you could, people bought grains, they bought all kinds of household things, cooking, whatever they needed. If it wasn't here, they would put their order in. It would come through from either Boston or Providence. The railroad was up the street. So the girls decided they could no longer maintain this building, although they lived upstairs. So they deeded it over to the Douglas Historical Society, and we have been trying to keep it up and maintain it with most of the things that were left here by them, or items that people had bought here and decided when they did not want to keep them anymore, returned and donated them to the historical E.N. Jenckes Museum. Recently, we've been trying to do a lot of maintenance, looking for grants, looking for donations, and we've been fortunate enough to receive some, so we can do a lot of upkeep, painting the building, repairing the porch, and we've still got a long way to go with the barn, which is in much need of repair, which is part of this whole thing of horses which were maintained to deliver groceries and so forth during the olden days. When kids used to come in for a little tour, I would say to them, so what do you think this reminds you of now? Where do you go? Of course, they'd always say Walmart. You could buy anything here, anything. And this is where it all was. So thank you, Jill, for coming to do some painting and show interest. And hope you'll all come back. And anyone watching this, welcome. And we try to be open on a Sunday afternoon, and we'll probably try to set a more definite date of, even if it's once a month, that people could come by. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. And if you want any more history, I do have some more.
Okay.
That's enough.
Yeah. Okay, so I am Jill Pottle. I am a teacher of many years. I teach out of the Worcester Art Museum, amongst other places, and it's a delight being here today. I am going to be working in oil paint. I have my palette all set up. I have my tubes laid out, my brushes laid out, and I'm ready to roll. And I do teach oils, acrylic, pastels, drawing, a plethora of different things. So today it'll be oils because I just figured it was a great subject matter. I paint with oils without any solvents. Most of us painters are now going that way, which is how oils were originally conceived of, not to use turps, paint thinners, anything. You don't need them to paint with oils anymore. So there's no odor and there's really no mess. All right, so I picked a spot, which I could have picked many spots in the store because there's lots to look at. And I kept thinking I was going to paint the shelves over here, but I think I'm going to paint part of the doorway and part of the hat boxes above, which is kind of odd, but that's what's really drawing me in. And as an artist, I like to paint what pulls me in initially. It's usually my first response that I kind of go for. I usually start in a sketchbook. Today I am not, since it's going to be a quickie painting. The sketchbook can modify or help select what I'm looking at and package it in a better way. A lot of times when I just start on the canvas, of course, if you're doing something in a one-shot deal quickly, I don't always start on paper, but it can help resolve a lot of the drawing problems that I'll probably get into today. Why the heck not, So I'm just going to start in. I'm on a linen canvas board, which is high-end canvas boards. Canvas boards generally are not great to paint on because they're not archival. I have a oil-based ground. Oil-based paint should be painted on an oil-based ground because that's how you want to build it. And I tinted it with fuchsia, which is always my favorite because it kind of stimulates more color, gets things to be a little more excited. And I tend to sketch on here with charcoal. Keep looking at that corner, I keep looking at that corner, but I love the open door. So I'm kind of torn between the two, so let me just narrow it down. It's definitely going to have a doorway that I don't want right smack in the middle. Someone said that, so I've done some doorways recently and some windows. Someone mentioned Lois Dodd as an influence, which I didn't know till I looked her up and went, oh yeah, Lois Dodd did a lot of reflections on windows. Much more of a primitive style painter. I tend to be considered more of a new realist. So I have this passage in here, so I want to set this up and I love this idea of not just having a wall, but having an opening and an area that you could move through. And this is when the perspective might get kind of interesting. But I love the fact that this is another space with a space in front of it. So it ends up being kind of fun, to play with. Yep, I've got to get my little things out of the way to work on a painting. And I'm already a little extreme about the perspective. But you might as well be extreme, might as well be more expressive, might as well put things down more than they are, because really trying to create something interesting in here and dynamic in here. So the question would be, with drawing with charcoal, my students always ask me, doesn't it mix into the paint? And the answer is yes, it does. Is it a big deal? No, use more paint. So I feel like I need to shift this whole thing down because I'm going to end up with a lot of opening in the door. So I'm going to just move this down. This is why I like charcoal. It's magic. You just wipe it off. Because I'm going to get those boxes in there. If I'm going to get those boxes in there, this whole shelf has to really come down inside of here in order to have more space on it. Trying to keep this a little off center because I think being a little off center will make it a little more interesting than putting the doorway right in the middle. So I should start with the boxes, I think. Love them. Aren't they wonderful? Hat boxes, food boxes, flower boxes. They're not flower from the garden boxes, but more food products maybe, you know, on these. And look at that wonderful yellow ochre one that's up there, little Viridian green one that's up on there, you know, just a really fun subject matter. Or the pun that comes to mind, because there's definitely a pun here, is I'm working outside of the box. Right? You know, doing something that you wouldn't normally look at as a still life subject matter, right? You know, what is still life? Still life is anything that's sitting there begging to be painted. So it's not, you know, bottles on a table, it's not flowers, it could be a pile of shoes like a Van Gogh, could be a lot of different ideas and subject matter. See that nice shadow that's falling on the wall behind the box here? You know, that's quite sweet. And yeah, I like the charcoal because I can push around my drawing a bit and get something else going. I guess my shelf is expanding. Well, maybe the doorway will be bigger. Like I said, you know, if you're working in the moment and you're just trying to make something happen, I am considering the composition, but things happen that possibly wouldn't happen if I was sitting here for the next 6 weeks, 3 hours a week, working on a painting, you know? So I love that patterning. I love the negative spaces in between. Really, really sweet, you know? If I add a few boxes, if I minus a few boxes, doesn't matter, you know? I'm trying to come up with something interesting, provocative, fun, you know, visually pleasing. And these little knobs do get in my way. I've been doing studio painting. This is my plein air easel, and I get kind of like unused to my obstructions here. So this guy is going to be obstructed doorway, yes. So the doorway is getting more central. Well, so be it. That's the way the doorway goes. Okay. So I'm looking into that door frame a little bit. So I'm seeing a little bit of the inside of the door frame. So for me, when I'm doing a demo, there's interesting things going on because I'm kind of painting a little bit sideways, which creates a little bit of a challenge with perspective and stuff. The other thing that's interesting is when I'm painting, I would have stood up like 5 times now and stood like 6 feet away from my work. But when I have an hour and a half to throw something on canvas, I just go for broke. It's hard to see if you're really close to your work. I even like that box on the wall. And if that's not even, I don't even think that's an antique, but I just like the shape of it. I like it being there. I like it kind of fitting in the groove here, you know, that it creates another division inside of here. I like the sign that's on here. Not sure if I'll get the lettering in there or not, you know. But yep, eggs, poultry, all sorts of good stuff to get at your general store. I was going to say Woolworths are the store that I think of in West Concord. There used to be an old Woolworths store that's no longer there. I see some of these shapes, but I love this passage. I just love it. It was funny because I really wanted to do those bottles when I first came in. And I'm doing this wonderful passage into a whole other world. So, you know, it's like taking a hike in the woods and taking a turn down a pathway that has something that intrigues you above and beyond the literal, you know? What do you see down in here? What's that room about? What are those things on the shelf inside of there, you know? How is that shelf even staying on the wall? It looks like it's got 2 little boards here holding it on the wall, you know? What's on there? What's that room used for? So I like passages. I like spaces that are in between other spaces. I find it fun, engaging. I like unusual things. So inside of here, up inside of here, going the other way. So you get a little bit of a spatial thing in here. And again, do I like my spaces? Do I like my plan? Do I like my design? I've been told I take on very odd subject matter. What can I say? You know, I don't like the bottles on the table as much, even though in teaching, if you're new at painting, there's nothing better than doing bottles on a table because they're stable, they're going to help you see, they're going to help guide you and teach you how to use your materials, which is important as well. So let's see, what else? Oh, you can see the beautiful shadow shape that's below all of this. That shadow shape that's right underneath that sill in there. So I'm kind of looking at shapes, division. Oh, that's a little piece of wood that comes across here that creates another division. You know, inside of there, do I see anything else that I can come up? Inside of here, yep, I see another little division in here, which changes the shape of that space. I just go with a lot of evenness, you know, getting a little bit of a difference. I think I'm going to include this board inside of here as well, coming across, which comes into the latch. And you know, what are you attracted to in stiletto? What are you attracted to in spaces? What are you attracted to when you come out to paint? You know, what draws your eye in? Okay, missing a little space in between here and here. And I do, you know, I always talk about the believability of what you're painting, not necessarily the reality of what you're painting, because reality is based on making sure that things have volume, making sure that things sit in the space, making sure that they make visual sense. But if I add a few more shelves, if I add a few more slats, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to the painting. It matters what's happening with the painting, because if I can find some interesting divisions, as long as it is believable, because that's really the word that I use a lot with my students. I say, you know, if they want to add a jar in a space, if they want to add another division, can you make it believable? And of course, the rule of thumb with any artist is if you can be convincing and make it believable, put it in there, and if it doesn't look right, then you got to take it out. Because if it doesn't look right, it's not going to work, right? So you want to make sure that whatever elements you put into a painting, they actually make visual sense. You know, visual sense of placement, visual sense of tone, visual sense. So for me, the drawing in itself, I would spend, if I was setting this up on my own, I'd spend maybe the first hour or so working on the drawing. Not detail. I'm not interested in detail. I am, if you look at my work online, pottleart.com, I am interested in detail, but I'm not interested in putting the detail in when I start the painting. I'm interested in putting the detail in later when the elements of the painting are working. So I kind of brought that in too soon. This is going to drop down here. So I'm just making sure, again, go back to this word over and over again, that this all makes visual sense. Make sure that that's the bottom of the shelf. Make sure there's a little lip on the top of the shelf. Make sure I'm getting a little space behind there. Little bit of a shelf. Oh, look at that wonderful thing of string up in here. Wow, that's a big container of string. Do I like the division on the wall? Am I going to put the ceiling in? No, I'm not going to go that far. So, do I like my clutter? Do I like my arrangement? Working sideways, my verticals oftentimes are a little crooked. My mentor, George Nick, will use a ruler. Would I use a lot of ruling in here? Well, I could if I really wanted to. Sometimes I think making the lines not so straight is actually more interesting than making the lines really straight with the ruler. If you start ruling, then it means you better get the perspective correct. And if my perspective's a little off, my verticals are a little off, it'll make a much more interesting painting in the long run, I think. You know, be a lot more fun. I actually just saw the, this is the kind of place where you start to draw and you go, oh, there's a little whisk broom over there. Look at that. That could be a fun little element to divide up that space. So, yeah, so I could keep drawing forever on this, and at a certain point, like I said, oh, and I'm going to see this box through here. So just to give myself information, okay? So I remember that these certain things are inside here. That's going to have the 2 jars here. That's going to have 1 division across here. And then, you know, like I said, if I leave something out, does it really matter if I leave something out? It doesn't matter if it looks right, if it looks right enough. Oh, I'm going to just change this just a little bit. All right. So now that I'm looking into this, I do want this to be a little more believable. This is going this way. This is going to go this way. I like that better anyway. And this is going to come up this way, and I'm going to get the side of this. I'm going to look inside of this a little bit. Okay. Get a little bit of the bottom. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. I don't know. I'll probably just imply it, you know, because I'm definitely not going to be painting all the stuff that's in here today. So get this shelf to be in this space a little bit. It's also the dynamics of some of these angles too that I want to make sure that it makes sense. So I think I got something. I think I can move forward on it. And if my audience ever wants to ask me any questions, they do have a little audience here, feel free. I always say to my students, oftentimes I'm going like 90 miles an hour and painting, particularly on Zoom these days, which I'm still doing, and I'll hear from them later saying, I didn't understand this and I didn't understand that. It's like, ask me. Don't wait till you don't understand it. Make sure that you ask the question sooner than later, and it's fine to interrupt because that's the name of the game, right? So we've got something going in here. It's clutter, which is a store, right? Filled with all sorts of goodies and stuff in here. So we'll just move forward and work with this. So I have a regular palette out. This palette I've been painting since I was 5. Professionally, I've been painting since I was 11. I actually went to an art school at age 11 when I first picked up oils. And my palette has been set up exactly the same way since that time. This is a very classical way of setting up a palette with oils and acrylics. Is it a little small? Yep. That's why I have a second one here, just in case. It drives me a little crazy and I won't have enough room. What I like to do before I even start painting is I like to set up a range of colors that I think I'll be working inside of today. Doesn't mean that these colors are going to be used literally. Doesn't mean they're going to be the only colors I use. But without setting up kind of a range of colors, I don't know where I'm going with my palette right away. And this gives me information. So your palette is your guide. It's your info center. It's your notes before you write that paper on the Amish people. Let's say you're writing a paper on the Amish people and you only read one book. Well, that's not going to get you very far, right? So you got to do some prep and kind of look and say, okay, well, there is going to be a blue, but I don't think it's going to be that bright. So I'll throw a little yellow ochre in it, dull it down. I tend to paint with a brighter palette most of the time, even though my example paintings that I brought in today are painted in a barn, and I didn't start very bright with them. My challenge was to do a lot of brown, which is not a color that I particularly enjoy painting, but I always like a good challenge. I always like working with new materials, new information. So I'm kind of looking at this, and I bet you that doesn't show up on camera because I've been zooming forever. Very, very light kind of turquoisey blue. So I'm just trying to find the general range of colors that I'm going to be in today. So, and working with. And mixing with a palette knife is much more effective than mixing with a brush. If you mix with a brush, oftentimes your brush gets dirty and then you're cleaning your brush all the time. And then if your brush is wet, it's hard to paint with oils with a wet brush. I don't tend to clean out my brushes when I'm painting. I clean them out after, hence having a lot of different brushes set up for myself to use. With oils, I get a lot darker than I normally would. because with oils you can get your lights on top. Acrylics, you gotta get your lights in there right away. So I'm just doing some searching. So my palette in my studio, I'm already ripping this. This is freezer paper. My palette in my studio is glass. I really don't like paper palettes, but for travel, I like paper palettes. So, you know, it's like they work. So I just put a hole in it. And it kind of stains the paper a little bit. So on Zoom, I try to use my glass palette because I can actually wipe it off and clean it off when I'm working. So I'm looking at my colors thinking, are these the colors really that I'm seeing today, you know? And how many do I want to make? Well, I don't want to make all of these, you know? Definitely don't want that to be that bright. That's like flamingo pink from Lemonster's plastic company. So got to dull that down a little bit.
Jill, do you always prep the canvas with a color?
No, I don't. Good question. It really depends on what I'm going to paint, the choice of location that I'm going to paint in. When I tell my students, when I work with my students in classrooms, I tell them to tint it with a little yellow ochre. When I say a little, just to knock the white down, because it's actually easier to see color if there's not white. White is highly competitive to see color on. It's much harder than having just a little bit of color on there. Fuchsia's challenging, but yellow ochre is, well, it's an earth color. So, you know, in the early days of painting, what did they tint their canvases with? They tinted their canvases with brown because their palettes were wood, you know?
How did you decide on the color that you prepped that with today?
The pink was because I was thinking dark, historic space, and I wanted to get a little light underneath it. It was either that or a yellow. To try to increase the brightness that's underneath it, because if I painted on white, it would probably get pretty dense and pretty flat pretty quickly, and having a color to agitate the other colors, because color theory is based on relationship of color and not on the literal color itself. It's the interaction of the color. So I was thinking fuchsia because there might be browns. I was thinking fuchsia because there might be, well, actually it turns out there's some kind of turquoisey colors. So to me it seemed logical to head more into a fuchsia to activate some of those browns and some of those dull tones. This will make things a little bit brighter. Oftentimes I use fuchsia with green when I'm doing landscape, because green will just really sing on it. It just will really love it. Oh, look what just happened. I say green, and then suddenly green is happening on the palette. It's like magic. I'm so influenced. It's nothing harder or worse for an artist, because this is what I do 7 days a week. When people come into my studio and they give me unsolicited advice or suggestions, it impacts everything. So I've learned in the history of my painting is that I never show anything till I'm ready. I say green, and the green shows up because I'm so, us artists, we're all very sensitive beings, right? So we get impacted. We get impacted by music. We get impacted by conversation. So it's just so interesting. I'm ending up getting a nice little beige in here. You can make all your browns and all your blacks out of color. If you are putting black and brown on the palette, you're putting a different color that's not related to the other colors inside of there. So I tend not to use browns or blacks. I'll make them, you know, so, and I probably should come up with a few of those. And then I'll just start painting. I generally use my palette knife to mix with. When I do demos, I don't, because there's just not enough time to be going back and forth to my palette knife to my brush. But I will, in my studio, I will mix with the palette knife. I'm not in a hurry to finish a painting, ever. If I'm in a hurry to finish a painting, it might be finished, but it's not going to work. you know? You gotta let it have its own being. I'd rather have an unfinished painting that's successful than a finished painting that's a bit of a disaster. And inviting your paintings to work is, I mean, it's a process, right? So being a process, I want to make sure whatever I do on here is making visual sense, you know? So it goes back to the visual sense statement. Do I like the colors? That one just, I need it, but I'm not sure if it's the right color for all of this. It just seems a little bit of an outsider.
You can go up.
I think I need to knock it down a little bit. Oh, feel free, come
Yeah, here,
closer.
I'll move this way.
Take a look. So when folks say to me that oils are hard, they aren't any harder than acrylics. Acrylics are harder because the edges are drying flatter. And watercolors even harder than oils. Oils are easy because you can take them off, you can put them on, you can take them off, you can put them on. I mean, that becomes the ease of painting with it. And you can lay it out, you can look at it. This color just justified that color. This color, a few minutes ago, was winning. Now I got another one to kind of compete with it. And that's the name of the game. You want to play these off of each other, you know? Maybe I need to find one more kind of like stunning color that'll pop. Give it a little more bite. Give it a little more intention. So here's the next comment that kind of surprises people. Everybody thinks acrylics are non-toxic. Why would we think that? Acrylics are plastics. You know what plastics are, right? They're not non-toxic. If anything, I would wear gloves with the acrylic more than I would the oil. They're both pigments, which are toxic, and oil paint is just oil with pigment. Acrylics is multitudes of plastics with pigment. So, you know, so when people pick acrylics over oils, I think you should be picking it because you like the feel or the look or the surface or the texture, not because one is toxic and non-toxic, you know, because they're both. I mean, this is still minerals out of the soil, so this is a dangerous mineral. That's why I always wear gloves. I would never not wear gloves. It's just not good for your health or your well-being. So I just do a little mixing, trying to get myself to give myself a sense of where I'm going with my colors, and I might even just nab a piece of paper out of here. Since I didn't sketch today, I might as well just move the pad, and this is what I have my students do. Just line up your colors so you can see what they look like. So I'm kind of within this palette. I mean, can I go outside of this? Of course I can. But, you know, like designing your new living room or your new kitchen, I mean, unless you're a maniac like me and live in my workspace, which I do, I live in my studio, and you're designing your kitchen, don't you pick out the wall color, then the, you know, the flooring, the color of your appliances, don't you pick them out first before installing them? So why would you just start painting this in without knowing where your colors are going? I mean, it makes perfect sense. I have many mentors in my life, live ones and dead ones, saying, Edward Hopper, yep, Edward Hopper does this. You know how successful he is, right? So I'm looking at this as being my range of colors. So it's funny, I repeated it on each end, you know? And I want to look at that and say, does that make sense for my painting today, you know? And doesn't mean other colors aren't going to enter into that, but primarily I'm going to be in that zone. So that's how I set up. That's how I set up my paintings. Now, grab some brushes, a little sticky because I just washed them out to get them here today. I'm in love with flat brushes these days. I would say if you're new, you probably use flat brushes, round brushes, filberts, brights, non-brights. I just like this wedgy type of feel of putting the paint on. This is my medium. I use odorless gel medium from Gamblin. I like the feel of it. I like the surface of it. What is it for? Both acrylic and oil need mediums. Mediums bind the paint, make them adhere better to the surface. So if I'm going to paint, I want to use a medium so I can make brush marks that are worthy of being on there. See why the fuchsia? It's like, it's like fun, 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 fun. So again, I'm using my brush because there isn't enough time to mix at the palette and to do all this other, notations and stuff, So that's a little break for that spot, but that's okay. I can knock it down pretty easily. And I use my medium to change the viscosity or the feel of the paint. I gotta remember where I am here. I'm over here. Okay. Yeah, that's why I put the fuchsia on, because already it's like party down. It's just such a happy color. Now my palette will get more disastrous because I'm not using my palette knife, and I'll end up with these little smudgy piles all over the place, which will make me crazy. And when my palette gets really, really dirty, I start fresh. I don't care if I even have 20 minutes left to do a painting. I will not keep painting on a palette that's a mess, because it doesn't make any sense. If your palette's a mess, your painting's going to be a mess. So you've got to just kind of, just trying to make sure I'm in the right zones here. And that's called dry brushing, when I don't have enough paint on the brush, or if I'm dragging the brush. Dry brushing is something I don't have to teach anybody how to do, because my students will do it anyway. It means that you don't want to waste paint and you're trying to get as much paint out of the paintbrush as possible. So don't dry brush, get more paint on the brush and make a good brush mark that's worthy of being on there, If you have to keep reloading, And when my students say, well, I didn't put enough paint up, put out more paint. So George Nick, my mentor, he's a very well-known painter from the Concord area. He would yell at me and say, more paint, more paint, more paint. And then one summer, and when I'm painting, and I put like 5 times the amount of paint that I have out today. I mean, I'm painting all day, right? I painted the best I've ever painted, because I had enough to use, I had enough to play with, to put down concepts with. If you don't have enough paint out, how can you make decisions? You got to be able to put that piece on and respond to it. So if I put a piece of paint here, let me make sure I'm in the right place here, is that a good value? Is that a good tonality? Is that a good idea? And obviously, I don't know, so I'll put something next to it, or against it, or through it, because I see a little highlight on that side. I see a little highlight, let's go over here, up in here. And painting is a process, so being a process, you got to just keep trying things. So is this going to be this light next to it? Is it the same value here as here? No, it's not. It's in space. All of this stuff is in space. So, if you fill stuff in, which makes me totally mental when people tell me that, I'm just filling in the space. Why? You're going to have to change it anyway. Or as my high school art teacher used to say, that's a big waste of paint. Why not make a good decision, whether it's right or wrong in a space, and, just keep going. See what else you got, because really, it's about making decisions. Most of my plein air paintings, I don't change them much when I leave the location. Number one, they're about, and I consider this kind of plein air, right? Because I'm just doing this as a one-shot deal. That, if and when I make a decision, I want to make the decision good. I just kind of put it on there, I think about it. How about this color? I just put it on there, leave it alone. Don't rub it in, don't futz with it. Because if you start futzing with it, you're probably going to end up with a dirty spot. And frankly, I hate painting on dirty spots in a painting. I like painting on fresh paint. I like putting a piece down and just responding to it. Okay, what do we got here? You notice how many times I go back to the palette, because I got to go back to the palette to see about the next color. Is that a good color? Is that a good value? Is that a good tonality? And the question and answer always is, I don't know. I don't know till I put the next piece on there. I don't know till I put the next piece on there. Because everything is relative to everything else. So in one of my classes, someone said, how do you make a good green? I always find those questions funny because it's all relative. You make a good green when you find a good blue. You make a good blue when you find a good red. It's all relative. You can't make a good color on its own, because when you put that color next to something else, it's now in relationship to, and now it's reading different. Now it's reading as a different color, as a different value, as a different tonality. So that question can't be answered in its own right. So gotta go a little faster here to make this happen. I might have picked on too much, but that's me. You know, just picking on a lot of information. Let's see, that's gonna come down here. You know, and I want to leave some of that pink coming through. I don't know how much I'll leave or how much I'll cover. I'll find out. So that's going to be a lot later over here, right? So I'll kind of, sometimes I do get a little hung up in areas. I'm not sure if I should be lingering so long in there while I have so many other things to do. And some of it is because when I'm talking, I get kind of stuck in areas too. So, you know, I don't always move around as much. So maybe I'll just kind of go to that background in there. So if you keep the paint on the tip of the brush, away from the ferrule, your brush is clean. If I do this, my brush is pretty clean to grab the next pile of paint. I don't dilute my paint till it's really runny. I just keep the paint right on the tip. I just went from dark blue to peach color. You know, and if I go to a peach color and I want to get something on there, I use the tip of the brush, because the tip of the brush will cover. If you use the side of the brush and scrub, it's not going to cover. Wow, that's a crazy, oh, that's the exit sign light, but it gives me a really cool, there's a really cool hard red back in there that's not going to show up on the pink, but it's kind of like exciting. It's like a little bit of a red remark back in there, you know, it's kind of responding. But back in the ceiling area, this is going to be a little darker. Back in here, it's going to be a little bit, oh, I've got those little wooden stands in there. Am I going to put those in there? No, we'll just throw that in there for now. And this is going to be a little darker underneath this shelf in here. Okay, let's get a little bit of dark. Oh, not quite that dark. Oh, but it's oils. So if I make things too dark in my oils, I can always make it lighter. If I make this too dark in acrylic, it becomes very opaque. So not wanting to make things too dark. Yeah, that's how I use my paper towel roll. I just rub it. You know, it's a lot easier than trying to hold a wad of paper in your hand. And oftentimes I'll have brushes in between all my fingers, so I know one of the questions that will be out there is, do you oftentimes just use one brush? And the answer is no. I'm using one brush because I'm talking. When I'm painting on my own, I use multiple brushes. You know, that's just how I paint. I just can't get out of my own way when I'm talking to use multiple brushes. I do have a bigger one here that might get picked up eventually, but you know, it just yams what it yams, you know. If I'm quiet, I would use other brushes, most likely. So, okay, so let's get this kind of settled back in here, because it's pretty dark back in here, right? Let's get a little more settled back in this background space and see if I can get that to drop back. And things are never as dark as you think they are, but with oils, I can make things darker in order to make things lighter, and then I can come back and pull out some of this to highlight some of it. I really want that to be more reddish brown than blue. Let's go with this. Okay, let's try this out. All right. And if I really don't like something I've put on here, I will scrape it. You know, 'cause that's what you do with oils. You take the paint off as much as you put it on. You take it off, you put it on. You take it off, you put it on. You know.
How long does it take oils to dry?
Depends on your medium. Good question. You can use a dryer in with oil paint, which is called alkyd, or you can use solvents with your oil paint, which will dry it out. and some of the dryers will dry things up to a day later, 2 days later. I prefer not to use dryers. I am using a dryer by using the odorless gel. I prefer not to use the dryers because it changes the look of the oil paint. So regular linseed oil, if you used pure oil with linseed oil, you're probably talking a week or two for it to dry. If you use walnut oil paints, you're probably talking a month.
Wow.
So it depends on what you want. If you use the oils, the oil paint and oils, you do get a much nicer look in the paint, because that's the nature of paint. Of oil paint is the fact that the oil is suspending your colors in oil, and the reason, well, we call when oil paint doesn't dry, it goes rancid, and it is similar to what is on the back of your stove. If you have a messy house, that oil that congeals on the back of the stove or on a pan is what oil paint does. It actually stabilizes and doesn't change, and it suspends the color in that oil. That's why oil paint is so stunning, is that you're actually seeing through the paint. You're seeing the colors through the paint. So it depends on what you want. If you want it to dry faster, you can increase drying time if that's what you want. A lot of my students love using the dryer mediums because they don't care about the actual look of it later. They're happy with the look being a little flat. Because if you have a dryer in the paint, it's going to make your paint flatter. It's going to make it look flatter. So that's the nature of oils. Acrylics, when they dry, the water goes out of the acrylics and it creates a flatness in the paint. And that's the reason why I don't really like the look of acrylics, because it creates flatness. And you can use the mediums to change that look and make it look less flat with acrylic paint if you want to. It just gets into skill, it gets into learning how to use your materials, your mediums, to get them to do what you want them to do. With how you manipulate them. And mediums are what paints are all about. So if you go on the Golden Acrylic site and ask about acrylics, the first thing they say is acrylics are meant to be used with mediums. A lot of my students tell me they've never used mediums, and I think, well, that changes the look of the paint, that changes the viscosity of the paint, which is the feel of the paint. And if you want your paint to have a little bit of a glow to it, a richness to it, you want to be using the mediums. I don't know why I'm lingering in this green area. I keep throwing more and more red in there. It's like, sometimes I feel like my eyes are just seeing what they're seeing. So there we go, a little more red inside of there, so. And again, talking, sometimes I do kind of odd things. I go, oh, I would have never expected that. But yeah, the drying time. People seem to be so worried about the drying time with oils. What's your hurry? Just put it on a shelf, The thing about oils is when it dries, it doesn't change. Acrylics, it changes. And if you don't mind that change, that's fine, And it's not a toxicity issue. Keep going back to that because everybody says that to me when they started in with paint. They go, well, I'm using acrylic because it's far less toxic. It's easier to clean brushes. Well, in a certain way, it's easier to clean brushes with acrylics because acrylics does break down with water. But guess what? So do oils. I've been cleaning my brushes with water and soap with oils since I started painting. You wipe it out. Of course, back then we used solvent first, and then you wipe it out, and then you go to the sink, you grab your Murphy's oil soap, and you start to switch brushes, and you just wash it out. And pigment's going down the sink anyway when you're using acrylics, so it's going down the sink when you use oils too. Solvents, you don't want the solvents going down the sink. You don't want blobs of paint going down the sink with both oil and acrylic, but you can just use your soap. You can buy the fancy brush cleaner soaps if you want. It gets kind of expensive. I find Murphy's, or is it, what is that old soap? Oh, I forgot the name of it. Fells Napa, yeah. A lot of my friends use Fells Napa soap. I don't like it. It's kind of hard on the brushes. It kind of creates some issues with my brushes. It looks like a really bad hair day when I clean with Fells Napa. But a lot of my friends swear by Fells Napa.
Dawn doesn't do the trick, huh?
Dawn can do a great job, yeah.
Okay.
I like Murphy's with my oil paint. Don't use Murphy's with your acrylics because it's got oil in it, you know, and it's not designed to have oil in it. But yeah, I bet your Dawn would work great because it's got that extra grease cutting thing going on. So yeah, so I'm following some of my shapes down in here. Over here, I love blocking out these negative spaces because it can really help me go forward. And I got to keep changing my color because the colors are not the same. This is not the same as here, so it evolves. It changes as it goes through space, hopefully. And again, sitting this close, I'm sure I'm doing all sorts of weird things. But, you know, needing to stay here, you know, kind of getting something going inside of here. So I see a little dark edge here, comes down, and it gets darker on the other side, which you want to get a little more blue in it. So I'm using the medium to change the feel of the paint. I'm not using the medium to dilute the paint. It's more, if I put the brush stroke on, is it fluid? Does it feel good? Am I getting a good shape in there? Am I getting a good flow in there? It's not, ooh, I gotta fill in that space, so I gotta add a lot of medium. And if anything, if you do any research or reading, it actually says on this tube how much to use, and you shouldn't use much. Because if you use too much, you end up with the oils. That's the hardest part about oils, is you end up with a lot of cracking and peeling and other dilemmas with oil paint, because it does have more issues with technical stuff. So to understand how to apply it. And your brushes are for making marks, so I'm trying to make marks with this. I'm trying not to fill in, because that's what my tools are designed for. Why not use what they're designed for? Don't fill in a space. Make a brush mark that's worthy of being there, you know? It's like, does this read as a shadow shape? Is this a good color? And if I were in my studio, I might adjust the color 5 times before leaving it there too. Right now, I'm just kind of going ahead, making things happen, trying to get some sense of space, trying to get some sense of those boxes. Got to use bigger tools, because I'm never going to get this painting going if I don't get a little bit bigger with my decisions. Yeah, I rub the brush on my palette first to see what the feel of the paint is, and then I go in and I make a brush mark, which, you know, isn't going to be the same all the way across, because colors are not the same all the way across. So, wow, I'm seeing pink in this of what's hitting the board inside of here. Yeah. Oh, I put that over here. That needs to be over here, doesn't it? Yes. Oh, I see. I'm missing a little, well, I don't need to put that space in there. I just, you know, this is me when I'm painting. I realize that sometimes I put things in the wrong space or place. I worry about that for like 30 seconds and then I move forward. Does it matter? The big question is this going to be a cool painting or what? That's really that matters to me, you know? So, oh, so that brush is over there. Well, I'm going to keep it over there. All right. You know what it's like, you know, in just life, you know, you walk into someone's house and you notice one thing, and then you walk in their house the next time and you notice other things, right? you know? So, you know, this was supposed to be part of the opening, and it ended up getting moved over, so I'm like, I'm good with that. It's like, that's where it's gonna go now. Okay, no problem. It's like, it is kind of funny, you know? Or someone says to you, did you notice? Did you notice? Like, you know, they just got a haircut or something, and I swear, you know, my male friends, you know, they would be like, doing the refrigerator blindness thing, they'd be like, new shirt? No, you've seen me in this shirt many times, you know. But it's like that with painting sometimes, where I'm like, oh, wow, that space was over here. Okay, well, I'm good with that, you know. I'll just make it over here. I mean, does it really matter for the painting? Again, if it's making visual sense, it doesn't matter. As long as I get this going right.
Even though the door frame is in the middle, the open door is not, and it kind of pushes it to the side.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. From
That's
this
what
angle it does.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's what's going on here. Oh, and it just got dark in there.
That light went out.
Yeah, that light just went up. Okay. It's like, what?
I could turn this other light on, but I think that would change things pretty drastically.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'll just keep going. So actually that's actually a good thing to even talk about a little bit is you know, you're outside, you're working on location, and the light's changing. I try to stay true to my sketch or my drawing or my notes, and I try not to get sidetracked to what is new that is happening. And that's why I even said, you know, you come up with something and then you forget about it. You're like, uh-oh, I'm missing that area. Well, too late now, you know. I basically just ignore it, because if I keep worrying about that piece putting there, it's like starting a whole new painting. You know, so I'm going to pay attention to what I originally kind of came up with and not worry about what I'm seeing right at this very moment. So I try to hold the brush like a brush, not like a pencil. Occasionally I do that where I use the edge. This is holding a paintbrush. This is holding a pencil. This is really holding a pencil. This hurts, you know? This is painting. It's like conducting an orchestra, you know? So you can use both sides of the brush, the tip, this, you know, all the different components. But yeah, that was a little weird, but it did say, well, it doesn't look that dark. It did say it's going to get darker.
No, I think she might have turned out the light on
Oh,
the inside area.
Oh, that's what she did. Okay. All right.
And just a time check, it's 1:03.
Oh, dear.
No, you don't have to finish the whole thing. I just want to let you know.
Yep. Well, I'm going to want to, though. It's like, oh my God, this is so tremendous. And now that I know this exists, I'll probably be back at some point or another. Is this place heated all winter?
I think so. I think that's what she was saying.
Yeah. Yep. Because I actually was driving here thinking to myself, oh, I hope there's going to be heat in there. Because I did teach at a place, where was I? And there was a group of us, we were freezing, and they didn't tell us that we weren't going to have heat. And I thought, well, that was nice of you. We were so cold. Oh my God. And we're getting into that season where we're not quite adjusted to the cold yet. So I think things feel even colder than they actually are. Because, you know, it takes a while to kind of get our bodies acclimated to what we're really feeling. So this is going to come across here. Dry brush. Okay. A little more medium in there. And again, this brush is almost ready to retire. Almost ready to retire. So let's get something happening here. Yeah, sometimes, you know, I've always said this with every demo I've done demos for years, is sometimes I move really fast, sometimes I'm slower. I don't know, you know? And I try to move at the same speed. Sometimes I'm more successful with the demo. Sometimes I feel like I'm not as successful with the demo. I don't know, it just, like I said, like painting. Well, I'll use this example. It's kind of like the tennis pros out there, right? So they've been practicing, they've been going out hitting the ball, They get up that morning for the competition, they're feeling really good, feeling full of energy, and they blow the whole game. You know? I mean, it's just what it is, right? You know, it's like sometimes you're really with it and you think, I'm going to do such a good job. I find sometimes the opposite happens where I'm feeling really energized, hyper-focused, and I paint my worst. And sometimes I'm so tired and I'm in the studio working and I'll paint my best. So it's really just, it's a matter of how you connect. Sometimes I connect better, sometimes I don't connect as well. It's okay, you know? I find every painting is a stepping stone to the next one. So, you know, if I do a good job with one painting, great. If I learn something from one painting and I didn't do as good of a job, great. It still gets the same reviews, right? I think that was going to be part of, the sign. Okay, so we'll come back with the sign in there. And sometimes, yeah, I'll go in and do it a little scrapey. All right, let's get this area going a little bit. Yeah, come back to this brush and get a little piece, because this is going to have a shadow. Oh, okay, so that's going to be inside the shelf because I moved all of that. All right, I'm not going to go inside the shelf too much, but I'm just going to get the shadow kind of riding here. Oh, come on, let's get that color changed. You know? And I have very small arguments with myself. It's like, what are you doing? That's the wrong color, that's the wrong value. It's the wrong tonality, so I'm going to make this into a shelf because I kind of overlap this and move this to the wrong location. So I'll just make that into a shelf. That'll work. And then I'll pull a piece of the trim forward. I mean, there's, you know, ideally, nobody's going to come in and look at your painting and look at what you were painting. They're just going to look at the painting and say, wow, that's really cool, or wow, that really worked. You know, they're just going to look at what you have.
In the back room, because she's actually painted into that back room. The light was on before.
It was late. Kind of surprising when the light went out. I thought, whoa.
Oh, the light's coming back.
Oh, good. Oh,
No,
good.
it's okay.
So, yep, that'd be great. Yep, so put that back in there. So.
I would bet that exit sign was not original to the building over 100 years ago.
Ah, there we go. That's perfect.
Is that good enough?
Yep, that's good enough.
'Cause
That's the one that was on
right here.
earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I need is just a little more contrast. Yep, so. Okay, kind of work around that a little bit and get a little bit of this shadow on this side, you know, so the shadow on this side. So when I paint on location, oftentimes I will not work on a painting outside of that location, because to me, a lot of what I paint when I paint on location is about being there and feeling it and experiencing the situation. So if I go home and paint on this, it's not the same thing. So I tend not to do that. So yeah, I have a lot of paintings that do end up unfinished, which is fine with me. You know, I got lots of things in the mix. I never work on one painting at a time anyway. I have 4 paintings going on in my studio right now. One has a lot of stuff that's inside of here because I tend to collect. Has 45 objects in it of tin. I love these epic paintings where there's a lot of stuff. You know, I think it's a lot of fun to paint a lot of stuff. So I like the challenge. The painting I'm into my 3rd month on the painting. So I'm not in a hurry. I don't paint on it all the time because I want to be in the right mood when I paint on a painting. I want to be in the same state of mind to work on a painting. If I'm in a different state of mind or a different mood, I'm not going to do a very good job with the actual painting. So sometimes I paint looser, sometimes I paint more tight, you know. I'm not always in the same mood. You know, different things happen. I do want to get some of these going inside of here. So there we go. Yeah, let's just plug that as a similar color in there. And it's good to, if you paint a lot on your own, it's good to have different things that push you to do stuff. You know, to do something different, like paint a little faster, like paint bigger than you normally would, paint smaller than you normally would, because there's always something new to learn. It doesn't stop at any point. You don't just get good at this and then you don't learn anything new, you know? There's always something around the corner. I've always appreciated the picture of Matisse, and not to say it isn't sad to see him on his deathbed, because basically he was really sick when he got old, but he's on his deathbed with a model standing right next to him, and he's drawing. And he believed that memory is memory, that you always needed the subject matter in front of you in order to learn something new. And it's a beautiful picture of him working away, because he's still cruising, you know? So I imagine, you know, that moment of like, I just have to make a few more marks. I just have to do just a little bit more. I'm not ready to leave yet.
Well, it probably kept them going.
Absolutely. Yeah, the drive to do this is insane. I mean, I dream about this. This is what I do. I mean, it's not just a hobby or a profession. It's interesting. I went to a concert the other night at Fruitlands, and Vance Gilbert was there, and he was talking a little bit about his life, and he said, you know, this is not just a profession. This is not something that we just, you know, out of the blue decided to do one day, say, well, I'll be a musician now. He says, I breathe, think, live this every single day. Or as, you know, it's just part of what we do.
You started so young.
Yeah, there's nothing else I wanted to do. There's nothing else in there. I like to do a lot of different things, but my focus was always painting. It was weird because my parents were very, very conservative, and I used to spend time as a little kid looking at the Rembrandt book that was in the living room, and if they'd really looked at that book, they probably would have let me look at it because it had a lot of nudes in it. But even back then, I recognized, I said, I want to do this. This is really what I want to be doing in my life. I don't want to be, I want to do other things. So then I went to 4 years of art school, and my mother said to me when I graduated, I didn't expect you to take this seriously. It's like, what the heck does that mean? Of course I'm going to take it seriously. I just find that really funny. She expected me to do the usual, you know, get married, have a family, and I just wanted to paint. So I always think of the story of Alice Neal. If any of you know the story of Alice Neal and how she did end up having children, but she was lousy. I mean, it made me feel bad to actually hear her history, because she was not a good mother, nor was she kind to her children. She was a little crazy too, but she was so devoted to her artwork that she just would leave her kids behind. I mean, you know, so, you know, not a good way to be, obviously, but you see, I'm kind of getting, and I'm working around this whole thing trying to get relationships happening, because that's what I'm painting. I'm painting relationships, I'm painting ideas, I'm painting connections, I'm painting flow. I'm not painting in things, I'm painting how they're relating, how they're playing off each other. I love this one box that has the arc underneath it. Oh, actually this one does too. It has this lovely arc that comes over this ledge, you know, which kind of puts it in the space, right? Kind of lands it in the space. Now I feel like I should go back and pull some of that light that's inside of there. And we do have some mixed up, so if this light is back in here, then it would come, let's bring it between these two. And I love the feel of oil paint when it grabs a surface and you can feel it going on. And when my students say they can't get the paint on top, guess what I say? Use more paint. And they're like, but I have all this paint out and I don't want to waste it. Well, then you're not going to get the brush strokes. You're not going to get the feel. You're not going to get, the application. It's really about grabbing the paint, putting a piece up there and responding to it, and yeah, we can go to Sargent. If you look at Sargent's paintings up close, guess what? They're all pieces of paint. Some of it is mixed in. Yeah, because that's what we do as painters. We do mix some of the paint up, but it's also pieces of paint needing to get those relationships happening, and not just filling them up from here to here. This is my crazy doorway that I kind of messed up on. So let's get this coming down in front of here. Should that be the same value? No, this should be lighter, that should be darker. Since I made that kind of a green, maybe that should be more of that blue-green instead of this value, because this was lighter, but I moved my door jamb a little bit. Yeah, let's get a little brighter in here. Okay, let's get on top of this. Kind of shift this. Or I gotta scrape and make it darker. Or I gotta come up with something else back in there. I think maybe I should make that, I'll just make this lighter back in here. Okay, we can do that. Let's end this shelf here and let's make this lighter back in there. Okay. So, because it's all comparative, right? So if I'm going to make something else read as it's going to read, then I want to flip something else in another way. Kind of I'll pull this across in here, down. I'm not sure if that quite works. I might have to scrape that and put make that darker in order to make that lighter. Because it's all relative, right? It's all relative to what else I'm putting in there, So I want to get this guy going a little bit. So this is going to be a piece of paper that comes up this way, because this is the other light piece that's on here. This is light that comes this way. Am I going to put lettering on this? Doubtful. Not enough time. Let's get a little bit of this going. Maybe I'll scrawl a little something on there. I'm not sure what yet. It's going to be a little darker on this side. A little darker on this side. Okay. And my palette knife is, sometimes I use it to draw with, sometimes I use it a lot, sometimes I use it a little. It depends on what I'm trying to do and where I'm at with the painting. What do I need? What do I need where? How do I need to orchestrate it? So I like this dark being there. It's not going to be as dark as the other side of it, so let's get a little darker in there. Now my palette is getting worse and worse, and if this was my painting, I would stop, I'd clean up my palette, put these all back into piles so I can actually see them relative to each other, because if the paint's all over the place, it's really hard to see how to go forward with a lot of this stuff. So that wasn't where I was going to go, but I kind of needed that to be back inside of there. Okay, that kind of set that up. That wasn't where I was. Sometimes I load the brush and I get distracted. I end up in a different zone than I was planning on being on. So I kind of like this box being inside of here, going dip, 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 dip. Not sure if that can be convincing or not. And if something is really not convincing in a painting, I'll either soften it so much so it's hardly there, or I'll just scrape it out. But I like having a little interruption over there. I think that kind of makes it more interesting. Should have been a little more selective in my drawing about what I put in there, because I'm still kind of iffying some of my ideas in there, and it's creating a little bit of chaos. I could have pulled those shelves together maybe with a more simple color. I'm always analyzing, I'm always trying to figure out how to make something work better. So maybe I'll go this way first. That's going to leave the doorway. Okay, so this is going to come down because this is part of this form here. Okay, so what's that space in between? All right, let's simplify this. Let's just bring this down in there. I don't know if I need all of those little pieces that are inside of there. Okay, so let's pull this across just a little bit and get a little dark underneath here and here to apply a little shadow shape, maybe. Let's reshape that a little bit. So I consider this a little bit of a drawing problem that could have been solved a little bit better at the beginning. But, you know, we just make it work. And would I stop and draw this? Possibly. Depends on, you know, how many days I'm going to spend here painting. You know, if I had a lot of time, I might stop and go to the sketchbook and figure out what I'm going to draw in there, which I endlessly tell my students to do, and they don't do. They say, but I want to be painting. Yeah, but if you're just painting and you haven't solved the problem, your painting's not going to get better. You know, you have to figure out what the problem is or get a piece of that visual problem to get solved so we can get the painting to go better, so we can make things work better. I'll get a little more orchestrated in there. Not sure if I'm quite convinced yet. So, and again, being this close to my work is also creating a little havoc. So one of my mentors and teachers, Paul Rahilly, he had us painting 6 feet away from our painting in our 6 feet away from the painting across the room, and that's where our palette was. So when we went to use our palette, we would load up our palette 6 feet away and put 2 brush strokes on our paintings and then go back to our palette again.
It's a way to get your step count going.
What was the purpose of that?
Making good, concise decisions and loading up, putting them on there, stepping back, looking at it, sitting with it, making the next decision, going back, looking at it. Because oftentimes, or I've used this statement many times this week, I've said, I can paint, I can have an art day where I'm in the studio all day, which was a couple of days ago, and I'll have 6 hours to do whatever artwork, and out of those 6 hours of painting, I'll paint 2. Because I'm designing, I'm drawing, I'm planning, I'm mixing, I'm standing back, I'm turning the painting, I'm looking at it in the mirror, new decision, move something, scrape something off, now I'm painting, up, now I'm pulling away. I'm very active. I'm not just painting a painting, I'm delegating ideas, I'm seeing if the ideas work, I have to sit with it a little bit to see if it works. I can't just paint it and have it all come out without those major decisions. Or as a friend of mine, years ago, which I thought was brilliant, she wrote a grant for the time sitting there looking at her paintings. And she got the grant, because that's what you do. You don't just paint the whole time. You spend a lot of time calculating the next move, thinking about it, designing, breaking things down, cleaning up, setting up. It's all part of painting. That's all part of process. It isn't just getting the brush out and filling in spaces. So the 6 feet away slows you down, right? You really can't go that fast if you're 6 feet away from your painting, right? You gotta really slow down, make a few ideas, step back, make a few more ideas, step back, you know? You really don't have the luxury of just blasting forward and filling everything up. So again, you know, just needing to kind of look at this. Is this working? Is it making sense? Do I like what I'm doing? You know? And, you know, that's the other thing, is not to just finish something because you feel like you have to finish it, but finish it if you feel like something good is happening. Because I think that happens too, where people feel like, well, I have to finish the painting. Well, why? You know, if the painting really is crashing and burning, if you're learning by finishing the painting, well, that's great. But if you're just finishing the painting to get it finished, like, you know, going out and doing errands, you know, and, you know, getting your grocery shopping done, I would say I would just stop it and try to figure out, well, what happened here? What didn't happen for me? What did happen for me? You know, how can I resolve it next time? You know, to figure out what I need to do. To get that little area going there. I want to get that. I like the broom because it's making this nice yellow ochre color right along this edge here. That's quite lovely, giving a little splash of something else in the picture plane. I like the doorknob, which was supposed to be over there, that's now over there. It's like, what'd you do? Did you move? I like this little doorknob inside of here, you know? Kind of comes around here. I kind of like that color, that value. So should I change these because those are all the same? Maybe. Yeah, not right now. Don't need to change it right at the moment. You know, and the words, I need to fix it, those words make me crazy. Nothing is broken here. The question is what isn't working and why? And it's usually the area that's not working isn't always the area that you think. It's usually the area next to it, behind it, you know, because a lot of it's based on relationships. And if your relationships are good, then your painting will work. If your relationships are not good, then something isn't working. And it's usually not the thing you think that's not working. It's usually the thing next to it that's not working. I'm going to get this leg that's in the way. To make a good brush stroke, a lot of times I will flip my paintings upside down to get a good brush stroke because these little guys are in the way. So in the studio, my painting's on an easel for a while, then it's on the wall for a while, then it's on the easel for a while, then it's on the wall for a while. So I'm trying to get good continuous brush strokes because part of it is making a good brush stroke too. You know, making something worthy of being on the surface. I keep going back to Surgeon because we have that show right now at the MFA, and it's interesting just to see the paintings up close and to see some of these luscious brush strokes, because really it's not about filling in, it's about making marks that represent ideas. So if you look at Sargent's dresses in particular, the brush strokes he uses to describe the forms, the shape, the pattern, the placement, is really very profound. Learning how to make a brush stroke that represents something rather than filling it in is a very different thing. How do you get good at brush strokes? You keep making them. There's no secret. There's no, like, a couple of my students try to get me to, you know, show them some magical trick that I have in my sleeve about making a good brush stroke. And I keep saying, well, it's not like that. It's really, you know, I mean, either the brush stroke works or it doesn't work, and I'll just come back and put another one there later, you know? So, let's get this dark in there. So, all right, let's get this dark inside of there. And, you know, I don't know if it matters if we know exactly what all these objects are. It might be just as effective to know that there's just a lot of stuff in here. And yep, highlights will pull them out. I'm not close to doing highlights yet, you know? Will I do highlights? Yeah, I could at a certain point do some highlights in here. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I'm seeing all these flashes of warm light hitting the cool, which is really quite nice, you know, inside of here. And the question is how much pink can I get away with showing? Sometimes the pink ends up completely covered up, and sometimes a lot of the pink will show. It depends. If it's working, it stays. If it's not working, it doesn't stay. It's as simple as that. So I get a little bit of a shadow underneath this little broomy thing. You know, I gotta scrape this to darken it, because otherwise we're not gonna get into that room with that light back in there. So
It's 1:30.
So, all right, so we might wrap this up, and it's going to be what it's going to be. So I'll do just a few more adjustments. I'm going to adjust that I want to throw a little more paint. I'm going to group these boxes a little bit. And then we are going to call it a wrap. All right. So up, too light.
Well, we said we could paint till 2, so it's up to you how much longer you want to stay.
Yeah. Well, just kind of wrap it up. It's good to push me to wrap it up anyway, because, you know, I mean, you know, all the painting I do in all my classes, it's like, I rarely paint the whole time in my class because then I'm not going to talk to anybody. What would I rather be doing? Painting. Oh, we'll just plug this up in here. Let's get a little. I'm just seeing what will happen if I let go of just some more of the pink because I got so much of it on there. There you go. Now that's starting to happen a little bit better. That's a little piece of orange happening over here, which I want. I want to get a little more of this light blue. You notice how I haven't cleaned out my brushes and I'm still getting really good clean colors? Because the paint is really stiff on the brush. How about getting a little bit of this blue up in there? That'll be kind of nice, you know? This, a little bit of that. Yep. Let's go on the edge of it. Is that too blue for the painting? Maybe. I might be a little too blue for the painting. Just kind of flip something on there, got to round this a little bit, get that arc back in there. I'm going to darken that and throw a little more. Oh, I wanted to get the shadow underneath there too. That is a dark version of, and yeah, you know, it's going to be good for me to quit because I will start getting dirty soon if I keep painting with this palette that I'm using. And again, I would go to the palette and I would pile up the colors, which I might just show you a little bit of that. So get this coming down in there. So I'm going to want to place that in, but I want to get down on that side too. That's going to be, that's kind of like a pinky, it's a pink zone down in there. I don't know where that pink is coming from, probably from a light someplace inside of there. And of course pink doesn't look like pink when you're painting on pink, but it'll just be a little warmer down inside of here. It goes off. Move that out of the way, buddy. So grab this guy out again. Oh, let's mangle it a little bit. Okay, you're just going to be mangled. I'm going to just darken that. And I need to stand back to see what I've done. It's going to be a surprise.
It's lovely.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Let's plug that in. So, let's...
I love how your composition draws us into the painting.
Yeah, that's the goal. I was saying, you know, why do you buy particular artists' work? Because you like their point of view, or you like their story, how they're telling their story inside of there. So now I'm going to go back to that strip, and that strip has to be darker for this to read lighter, because really that's kind of what we're seeing. So I'm wondering, that might be too light for the painting too, but I think I want that to be more saturated with color, but I want it to be a darker value. All right. Yeah, that's going to be pretty dirty because this brush is getting dirty now. So it shouldn't be that dark. Let's pull this in there. All right, let's see if I can get a good brush stroke inside of here. So it's going to make it darker. That's brighter. And of course, you know, with oils, it is harder to get, it's harder to get darker if you have light on there because it's wet, you know? So ideally, you always want to get things to be darker in order to get lighter. Motorcycles. So I think that'll pull us into that room a little bit better. And maybe get it a little bit darker. Pull it here. I think I want to nudge this down just a little bit too. That's better. That's better.
I was hoping you would leave that little pink space.
Too late. Too late. So now when I look at my palette, I go, oh my God, what a mess. And virtually, I'm on, you know, freezer paper. I would take all these colors, blah, 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 and I would scrape the piles that I have. I would make that into one pile, you know, but I can't keep painting with that. That's a mess over there, you know? And yes, these brushes are now getting really loaded. So they would retire, and then I'd go in here. Oh God, gotta clean these out better. And I'd pick another one. So when I plein air paint, I usually have 2 to 4 the same size brushes, and I just retire them, you know, and I don't worry about the cleanup till the end, you know. Makes your life a lot easier, then you can keep away from the solvents, you know, so, which is really quite critical. But there you go.
I love it.
I think it's there. I think it's soup. So, yeah, I think it's finished.
So
All right.
where
well,
can they find you?
You can find me online, pottleart.com, and I teach all over. People can send me their emails, and I can put you on my distribution list. I am going to be back in the Worcester Art Museum. I was doing Zoom through them, but I think Zoom isn't happening. I do my own Zoom classes, so if people want to Zoom with me. The folks that I've had them for 3 years. I get newbies coming in, and I have it all figured out. I have one camera on my palette. I have one camera on my painting, and I paint along, and it's very effective. It's very, very effective. Do lots of workshops all over. Yeah, so that's me.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So enjoy.